What is up, Straight Fire fam? It's your boy, Jason McIntyre, here on Straight Fire for Wednesday, June the 4th. But we have breaking news. So we're actually recording this Tuesday, June 3rd, because about 2 hours ago, in a shocking development, no less than 2 hours ago, Tom Thibodeau, the New York Knicks coach, fired by the Knicks with $30 million remaining on his contract. An absolute stunner. Now, the problem being in sports media and having to have a take all the time, a couple months ago, when the Knicks were flailing and struggling and going winless against the Cavs and the Celtics in the regular season, I came out here and I was like, hey, Michael Malone's on the market. Thibodeau's struggling. Let's go get Michael Malone. Then the postseason happened, and the Knicks beat the Pistons in kind of dramatic fashion. Jalen Brunson was clutch. Then they dethrone the defending champion Celtics. And by the way, I ran into Paul Pierce at Fox, and I said, oh, man, what a shocker. The Knicks fired Thibodeau after their greatest season in 25 years. And Paul Pierce, now it should be noted, he's a big Celtics guy. He's like, what do you mean greatest season in 25 years? I was like, they haven't made the conference finals this century. And he's like, no, it wasn't that great of a season. They only won 50 games. I was like, whoa, what season was better? And then Mr. Celtic got into the Knicks got lucky. The Celtics, we were injured. As soon as I hear that, I'm like, Paul, I'm out, bro. Jason Tatum went down in game 4 when the Knicks were leading in the fourth quarter. Okay, let's not act like that cost him the series. Obviously, him getting hurt, it ended any chance of Boston getting back in it. But this narrative that the Knicks only won because the Celtics were hurt, that's balderdash. Come on, get out of here with that crap. And then the Knicks, yes, favored against the Pacers, had a bit of a disappointment and losing 6. But I thought I saw moves from Thibodeau that my reaction when we came out with the Knicks postmortem earlier this week was, hey, I thought Thibodeau did a good job, took down the Celtics, good adjustments in the Pacers series. They just weren't good enough. The roster's not quite there. We're close. I don't think we need any dramatic changes. And, that seemed to be the sentiment echoed by a lot of Knicks reporters, right? Tibs probably safe. Cat probably not getting traded. And then here we are, boom, a huge, huge blockbuster move with the Knicks firing Tom Thibodeau. And, I mean, there's no other way to look at it, guys. James Dolan has been largely away from the Knicks, the owner, the meddling owner. He had the Sphere as a big side project in Vegas. That became a huge deal. Dolan was not really involved. It's difficult for me to envision Dolan was not behind this, and Leon Rose sat on the grenade for him and said, "Hey, this is a joint effort of the front office and ownership." Like, the Knicks are close. Going into next season, no Tatum. I think the favorites in the East undeniably are Knicks, Pacers, Cavs, maybe in that order. We'll see. I don't know. But I don't know that I can get behind firing Tibbs. The problem, Rob, is the names on the market pretty spicy. We could start with Michael Malone, who I pushed to be the coach, as the Knicks were struggling there in the regular season. You've got Frank Vogel out here in Los Angeles, who has won a championship. And, oh, by the way, he's playing golf with my buddy here. So I was like, listen, he's playing golf with my buddy here, I think in the next week or two. Hey, you got to ask about the Knicks job. I don't know that Vogel would get, but he won a championship. You've got Budenholzer, who was run off, one and done in Phoenix. And I think the most interesting name, Rob, is if you think back to how the Lakers, when they fired Darvin Ham, LeBron was doing a podcast with JJ Redick. Redick came off very smart. Redick got the job. So who did LeBron move on to do the podcast with? Steve Nash, who is a former NBA coach. Didn't show well in Brooklyn, but he kind of got screwed by Kyrie Irving, who did not want him there from the jump. Remember, we don't even need a head coach. And oh, by the way, Steve Nash still living with his family in Brooklyn. So it's not like there's a big move to be made there. Now, I do wonder, Rob, $30 million owed to Thibodeau. I don't think they're going to break the bank for somebody when you owe that kind of money. Is this a world where, hey, Nash could be on the cheap Or is there a Dan Hurley option? Dan Hurley coming off of UConn. Remember, the Lakers made a move on him last summer. It didn't work out. Hurley seems like a Northeast guy. He's very gruff, but popular in that area. The Knicks got options. And Dolan, oh boy, this is going to get spicy.
I mean, yeah, they got options because they're the Knicks. The Knicks are always going to have options, right? I mean, at the time when they got Tom Thibodeau, he was considered one of the premier coaches available on the market. That he wasn't the guy to blame for what went wrong in Minnesota. It was, the Jimmy Butler situation. It was Andrew Wiggins not being as strong as they needed him to be. It was Karl Anthony Towns, too willingly becoming the second banana instead of being the lead dog that they needed. So of course they're going to have options. The problem is, we'll work backwards. Dan Hurley, I think if he wasn't going to take the Lakers job, then he has no interest in coming to the NBA. That's just what I think, point blank, period. I believe that he used the Lakers as leverage to get the kind of contract he wanted there in UConn. And so I think that's a non-starter. Steve Nash is interesting because, even though it ended pretty spectacularly there in Brooklyn for him and the way things went with Kyrie and KD, the consensus seemed to be at the time that it wasn't necessarily Steve Nash's fault, because you recall Kyrie was going on Instagram Live saying, we don't even need a coach. Like, I could be the coach. KD could be the coach. Jacques Vaughn could be the coach, and we'd be just fine because we have so much talent between myself and KD. So when Nash was there, he was, we never even got to see whether or not he could be a good coach, period, because things went sideways so quickly, and he was deemed as the guy, like it wasn't his fault that it all went sideways. So that's an interesting one. As far as Mike Malone goes, of course he's the most accomplished guy on the list. Of course he's the guy with the closest ties to the Knicks. The only issue that you run into with him, and I think that if you were to hire anyone, he would be the most logical choice. The issue you run into with him is that how many Nuggets players came out and defended Mike Malone after he got fired with like a week ago in the season?
Were there any?
Zero.
Yeah.
Nobody came out and said, damn, man, Malone he got jobbed, bro. Like it wasn't his fault. We have a thin roster. He didn't want to play the young guys. Oh, and by the way, think of that. One of the issues that you people have with Tom Thibodeau, he doesn't play the young guys enough. Wasn't that the same issue that Mike Malone had in Denver? He wasn't playing the young guys enough. So
yeah,
I don't see a clear, obvious upgrade over Tom Thibodeau in this situation. And that primarily is your problem. You're just shuffling the deck chairs, in hopes that you're going to hit lightning in a bottle when we don't know for sure anybody's going to be a clear upgrade over Tibs.
Yeah, that makes it difficult. But you don't make this move after what Brunson said. Remember in the after, I don't know if it was the exit interview or right after Game 6, but Brunson was basically asked by somebody in the media, "Hey, is Thibodeau the right guy?" And he was like, "Is that a serious question you're asking?"
Right.
I mean, Brunson looked stone-faced like, that's my guy. I don't think that the Knicks make this move unless they had somebody in mind, right? Is that a fair statement? Because
absolutely. Yes.
I don't know if Tibs was beloved, but I do know this. The team was beloved. I mean, the Garden was electric. You had Celebrity Row packed. They were their TV ratings were massive. Dolan was basking in this, and I wonder if they already have their guy, and they said, "Hey, we'll just eat the $30 million because we got this guy lined up."
I'm sure that's what it is, and I also think, and this maybe leads to a different conversation, I also think that Tibbs kind of scapegoated here because, as we all know, James Dolan, interestingly enough, was on the Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart podcast back in March, and he was talking about, his past dealings as the guy in charge. And he said, quote, talking about the way they run things in New York, "There were times when we sort of reached for that shiny, sparkly object. Maybe this is what we need, especially when things weren't going well. Let's bring in this guy. Maybe he'll turn it around for us. Sometimes it's player, sometimes it's the coach. What I learned over time is that doesn't work. It really doesn't. You have to have fundamentals, the basics, so on and so forth." So this obviously flies in the face of that, which leads me to believe that this move was made partly because I'm sure they have someone lined up. I think to your point, I think that's obvious. It leads me to believe that Leon Rose is using Tibbs as a scapegoat because, as we know, Leon Rose is Jalen Brunson's godfather. He's Karl Anthony Towns' former agent. And while that sounds good on paper, those two guys, the Brunson pick and pop with Cat was deadly for the first 3 months. We talked about it earlier this week. Towards the end of the season, teams to figure them out. They had a negative point differential for that, perfect starting five that Knicks fans talk about between Brunson, Cat, Bridges, OG, and Josh Hart. So maybe this is Leon Rose saying, I know this works. I know that even though Jalen doesn't really play defense and Cat doesn't play defense, and we're playing OG $40 million to stand in the corner and shoot threes, and we gave away 5 first-round picks for McCall to be a 3-and-D guy rather than do anything on the ball, maybe we just need a new coach to bring it out of him, because I know this works. And honestly, as a Laker fan, it feels very Frank Vogel to me, where it's clear that the idea of the roster sounds great. On paper, it looks phenomenal. But as we saw throughout the season, once teams got tape on them, the fit wasn't what you thought it would be. The sum was not as good as it parts.
Well, I mean, I don't know. They did have a good run in the postseason, beating the Celtics and Pistons. And it takes time to gel when you've got 2 new starters in, no, Bridges and Towns, 2 new starters. We saw Indiana kind of run it back with everyone, and they didn't get out of the gate for a while strong. And then I saw like they haven't had back-to-back losing games in 6 months, which is insanity. But they had like a bit of a sputtering start to the season. But hearing you mention Leon Rose, I wonder, it seems unlikely, but is there a world where Rick Brunson, Jalen Brunson's dad, is the head coach?
It's entirely possible. I mean, if you believe Knicks Twitter, they said they saw more of him and his histrionics on the sidelines than they did with Tibs. Now, I wasn't looking at the Knicks sideline, full disclosure, to answer that question, but there are a lot of people who are Knicks super fans, hashtag Knicks tape, that they're saying, Brunson's dad was all in the videos, all on the album, like Suge Knight, like he was the guy, and because he rightfully so gets a lot of credit for bringing Jalen Brunson into their franchise and changing things around. So it would make sense that if you again, I'm assuming it's Michael Malone, but if it's not, it would make sense that they already have a guy on staff that they believe in.
See, the problem is Michael Malone is so similar to Tibs that is that going to work? I don't know. And then what if you go outside the box and bring in a Dan Hurley, and he's like, I can't play 2 guys that don't play defense. Like, instead of trying to figure that out, why don't I just get Cat out of here? Like, I don't know. It really opens up just a can. Like, all of a sudden the Mikal Bridges move, he's due an extension. I saw the numbers were like 4 for 156. And I'm like, holy shnikes. So your 4th best player is going to be making like $37 million a year. Your 4th best, because he's not better than OG. Like, that's not sustainable. We're seeing the Pacers and Thunder go to the finals with nothing like that. Their 4th best player is making peanuts, and the Celtics 4th best player is like Derek White, and he's making like 30 mil. And all of a sudden that team, or maybe he's not making 30 mil. I should check that. But Drew Holiday, like, all of a sudden they're like, whoa, we can't pay all these guys, So if you, I don't know, man, this opens up, like, I don't know, Rob, is there a world where you can trade Mikal Bridges to a team where instead of him being your 4th best player, he's your 3rd best, as he was, I think, in Phoenix, right? Or was it Ayton?
I mean, it's tit for tat, whether or not him or Ayton was the best player.
But on the rookie deal, I guess it made it different. But like, if he's your 3rd best, is he like an Austin Reeves caliber guy? I don't know. Like, I don't think he creates like Austin Reeves, but it's like, okay, well, if we can get Bridges out of here and get 2 or 3 guys, to create him in the aggregate at 37 mil, would you much rather have that? And again, you don't want to overreact, Rob, but watching the Pacers and Thunder, give me 3 guys totaling 37 mil. I mean, let's just come up with 3: Rui Hachimura, Gabe Vincent, Austin Reeves. I mean, that's probably more. That's probably more than 37 mil.
Right.
But I'd rather have those 3 than Mikal Bridges, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, we talked about this a few days ago. Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby are absolutely, I believe, worth what their contract. I think OG's worth 40 million relative to the market. I think Mikal is going to be worth whatever 35 he's going to get in his next deal. The problem is where they slotted him in and how they use them is not how you should be using a $40 million a year player. You can find guys who can do reasonable facsimiles of that for 40%, 40 cents on the dollar, you know. And as far as Mikal goes, I don't see them trading him because they just gave up 5 first rounders for him. Like, I can't see them cutting costs that quickly and saying, you know what, we overpaid. He's good, but he's not worth what we gotta slice him into 3 different guys, which I think is smart. I just don't think that business wise they do that. I think if they were to trade anybody, it would have to be OG because
OG.
he is the guy who is furthest away from that amount of movement. You know what I mean?
Huh.
Like
I
I
don't know.
don't
I
see them
actually
cutting ties on Cat this quickly. I don't see them, moving off of McCall that quickly, given what they gave up to get him and fundamentally changed a team that they was pretty good last year.
hmm. Cat's just going to be tough to move. I mean, he's going to command like $56 million in a couple of years.
I know.
I don't think he's a $56 million guy, even though he was the number one overall pick. I did just I was texting a bunch of friends about this Knicks move, and somebody said, "Can we get Jay Wright?" And I'm like, I don't know, man. He's been away from college basketball for a while now. He's had multiple opportunities to jump back in. You think he wants to go into New York City with the Knicks? I know they're the Villanova Knicks with Brunson and Bridges and Hart. It just seems a little far-fetched that Jay Wright. Now, if they get him, that's a great get. Good coach, but he's never coached in the NBA. And like he walked away from college, a lot of money, seemed like a lifestyle play for him. I mean, NBA season's longer, way more travel. I don't know. Jay Wright to me seems like a bit of a long shot.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, that would be awesome. I'm a fan of the Nova Knicks. Like we've been on this train before. Like there's a reason why I picked them to win the championship before the season because I believed in their roster. I believed in the camaraderie. I believe in, you know, something beyond basketball galvanizing a group. And I thought that Brunson and Hart being able to do that when they had DiVincenzo with Mikal, like I thought that was going to do it. And ultimately they fell short. But I still maintain though that if they are not going to change the roster, which I believe that when you make a firing like this with Tibbs, that you are conceding that it's not a roster issue, that it's a coaching issue. Whoever they bring in, if it's Mike Malone, if it's Jay Wright, if it's Dan Hurley, if it's Steven, whoever it is, until they determine, Jalen, we need you to not be pounding the rock into oblivion. We need to find ways to be more creative, more diverse in our offensive attack, where sometimes McCall's going to be operating as the guy leading the show. Sometimes it's Cat. Sometimes it's OG. Hell, sometimes it's Deuce McBride who's going to be running the show while you're standing off at the 3-point line, ready for a catch and shoot situation. Until they do that, I think there's always going to be a ceiling on him because history tells us unless you are LeBron James or Giannis, ball dominant players do not win at the highest level. Point blank, period. Especially when you're small.
Yeah. Does a coach exist? Do we know of a coach who can get Brunson to, hey man, we need 90% of what you did last year. The other 10% we could play through Cat. We could go through a bench mob, if you will, but we just need little less ball dominance. How's that going to go over when his dad's on the coaching staff? And let's be real, they had their best season in like 25 years, Rob.
Well, I mean, the fact is that when you have those kind of conversations, it's all relative. For the Knicks, this was a fantastic season. Like, the Knicks get a lot of pub because they're the Knicks, but they don't win. Point blank, period. The 7 years before Tibbs got there, they had a 330 winning percentage. They had 0 playoff appearances. As a team before Tibbs got there, they had won 1 playoff series in 22 years before Tibbs got there. So for them, a run to the Eastern Conference Finals where they were clearly outmatched against what some would call a less talented team, that's a successful season.
Yeah.
So now you got to recalibrate your mind and say, I know this is good for us, but it's not good enough, for me. And for me is Dolan and the front office and winning a championship.
Okay, how's this? And it's hypothetical, which is always a fool's errand. If the Knicks had gotten by the Pacers and got to the finals, and let's say they got swept by OKC or lost 4-1, is Thibodeau fired?
Ooh, that's a tough question.
See, because again, like, I didn't think the series loss to Indiana was bad. Like, was it coaching that blew a 14-point lead in the final 3 minutes of game one? I mean, or was it just unbelievable 3-point shooting from Aaron Nesmith? Yes, the Knicks obviously wasted that one away, and I think they would have won in game 7 at home, but I mean, you could see the incremental success. And like you said, I think in like 19 years before Tibbs, they had one playoff series win. They had they had 3 in the last 2 years. I mean, they got second round, and conference finals. Isn't that progress?
Of course it is, but if that's all should be enough to keep his job, right?
Yeah. If you're Tibbs, you kind of got to be shocked. Now, again, you give me 30 million to walk away, even after taxes and all that fun stuff. It's still at least 15 mil. I don't know, Rob. I mean, Tibbs is not going to want his coaching career to end this way. I will say this: he's never made the NBA Finals, has he? Because
only as an assistant. Only as an assistant.
Okay. So oh gosh, he's 67. Damn. So with the Derrick Rose Bulls, made the conference finals. With the Timberwolves, he had some okay years. It's by guy's been consistently working in the NBA, assistant in Minnesota, Spurs, Sixers, Knicks, Rock. I see no time off at all. This guy is a grinder. It looked like he actually, between the Bulls and Timberwolves, he might have taken a few months off. But man, I don't know. If Knicks fans are kind of shocked, I haven't detected glee. Like, yes, he's gone. Have you?
Not at all. Not from Knicks fans. Not from Knicks media. It's anyone who's cheering about it is national, because they have this perception that the Knicks should be better and that they, melted down and things like that, which you can make that argument. But, as my daughter's screaming in the background, but what you got to say is that Knicks fans know that they're long suffering, that they have not been this good in a long time.